And I feel an obligation to pay it back, to pay it forward to those other people who were in as much trouble as I was and felt as horrible as I felt, So let's help them. Because we can live stress-free with money and live a really rich life.
To the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Dr. Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions. We are a counseling agency here in Iowa. We are still doing telehealth sessions on the phone or on the computer for anybody here in Iowa, as well as in our 6 office locations. And I'll let Chrissa talk about our in-home services for kiddos.
I'm Chrissa. I am the Vice President in charge of Heart and Solutions, in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services, and we go in-home and work with children ages 4 to 18 on different behavioral skills. We can also see clients in school or telehealth right now, like Julie said, as well, or in the office, and work with those different kids and their families on those behaviors. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
So we post new episodes every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central, and I'll tell you what, I did not batch up my laundry and put my laundry away last Sunday night, so I was scrambling both days this week. So I'll tell you, it's going to be a double batch this coming Sunday. So batch up your laundry, batch up your meal prepping for the week, pack all your lunches for the kids on Sunday nights, and go ahead and put the podcast on. It gives you the entire week to get in touch with your counselor if you haven't seen them in a while, if you're not scheduled, or to get in touch and schedule with any one of our guests for this week. Mm-hmm. So today we've got a special guest. We've got Pam Richardson of Money Mastery with Pam. And money is one of those topics that's like, you're not supposed to talk about it. People get so weird about money. And in a similar way, people get weird about counseling, right? People get weird about mental health. They get weird about behavioral health. They get weird about money. These are some of the things that it's like, oh, am I allowed to bring that up at Easter dinner, right? So we are very, very excited to have Pam here. Welcome, Pam. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Julie. This is amazing. I look forward to our discussion. I love talking about money. Awesome. So let me tell you guys a little bit about Pam. So Pam has a social worker background. She's a social worker, like a lot of the counselors in our field and in our agency. So she's got that social worker background. Pam is here to tell you more about why we do what we do with money than about what you should do with your money. So I think sometimes when we talk about financial education, when we think about people who help us with our money, we think about bankers in big stone rooms telling us you should put this amount into this account, right? And Pam takes a totally different approach because she understands that that money has more to do with the behaviors that we do with money have more to do with us than they do with the math and necessarily the numbers. So welcome, Pam. We're very, very happy to have you here. Tell us a little bit more about how did you go from a social worker to money, helping people master money?
Well, right out of college, I was an abuse and neglect social worker. And if you know anything about the industry like you do, that is not a lifelong career. It's pretty emotional and it took its toll. So after a few years, I decided to get my MRS, get married and have children, which took me out of the world of social work. And then I just became a serial entrepreneur and developed a really bad relationship with money. And my mom passed away and I received some money, and that came in and it went out. And then someone else told me that they would be sharing some money with me. And I knew that I had some problems with money. And so I sought help. I enjoyed the process. It can be a painful process when you have to face your demons, but that's the only way to heal. So in the process of getting the help for my money issues, I realized that I could do what my money coach was doing. So I became interested in seeking, there's a lot of different certifications that you can get out there. There's not any one certification that's great. So I'm a Dave Ramsey Master Financial Coach, work with Coach Connections.
You look like Dave Ramsey.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey.
I like Dave Ramsey.
I agree with a lot of what he says. He takes a 2x4 approach, though, and that's where he and I differ. But I will say he has probably made more millionaires out of Americans than anyone else in the industry. Just my personal opinion.
Yeah, wow. So you've had the experience, you've gone through the experience of having some money come in and then having that money go right back out. And as you were talking about that piece, I was actually thinking about a Dave Ramsey quote when he works with football players that go professional football, right? And he says NFL stands for not for long, because you get these contracts for, your first year is, I don't know, $5 million or whatever to play in the NFL. But a lot of times people are going in and going, I can't even imagine that amount of money. I have no idea what to do with that. And so then it just kind of, all too often we see that with lottery winners and with, professional athletes where the money just goes and they're going, what happened? Right. And what you're identifying is that there's so much emotion. There's so much emotion that goes into the management of money. There's so much, it's not just all knowledge. Right. And I think that's right where you really come in and help people.
If it was about knowledge, we would all be wealthy. Right.
We all be skinny and wealthy.
Exactly. It's not rocket science. Money in, money stays. Money doesn't go out. Right? It's not rocket science. But the bottom line is that we have behavioral actions that are driving us. We have emotional reactions that are driving us. And we have triggers, right? You know about triggers. And like my identifying source of comfort are bookstores. So if something's going on with me emotionally, you can find me in a bookstore. But with therapy and treatment, now I can sit with the emotions a lot better than I ever could before. And okay, so I had to put my dog down a week ago Saturday. And yes, I did go to a bookstore, but I spent no money. None.
That's a huge win, because what a loss that is. When we had a whole episode when my cat died, we had a whole episode about pet loss and how this is a real thing. This is a real grief time. And so what a win that is, and what a great example for your clients that you work with to be able to go, yeah, this was a devastating day. And I went and I did my self-care, my coping, right? And I went into that bookstore, but I didn't need to buy something for me to be okay.
It didn't feel good anymore.
Yeah, it didn't do it for you anymore.
The health has started to take effect, right? And it's not, in therapy, it's not a one and done deal. You have to be in this for the long haul. Well, there are some positive psychologies that are, a much quicker approach, but for some of us who have some deep trauma, it's taken more than a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Think about these things, these painful experiences that we have. We all have them. We all lose pets. We all lose people. We all go through these experiences. And it's what do we do with that pain? Mm-hmm. How do we process it or not process it? That really makes a difference in our overall health and in our overall well-being in our lives, right? Do I process this pain so that I can go, okay,
am going to have this pain. I cannot get rid of it. I cannot hide from it. I cannot run from it. I have to experience this pain to let it process through, because a lot of the things that we do that are not in alignment with our goals, with where we want to be in 10, 20 years, a lot of those are ways that we go, oh, I feel pain. I don't want to feel that anymore. Right. And so I'm going to go do something. And what you brought up in terms of the loss of your mother, and sometimes loss comes with money, and how I remember when my husband's father died, he inherited a house. He and his brother, they got a house, a car, and a lawnmower. Okay. And he got a boat, a little fishing boat. And that's what they got. The two of them split that up. They reacted so differently to that money. Okay. And we're talking like $20,000 a piece. Okay. And they got this money and they reacted so differently because their relationships with their father were so different. And so it really, they both had the same loss of the same person. They both had this inheritance, but the way that they processed that pain and that loss did come out in the way that they handled that money, right? And there can be so much guilt with those kinds of things, right? Like, I don't want that money. Like, get that away from me. As far as, how fast can I spend this?
I was just thinking that. Yeah, you'll see inheritors who will not own the money. They don't view it as theirs. And they will react by just giving it away. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And then they realize, you talk about loss of pets and parents and people and other things. What about the loss of the money? How much shame do we carry if we inherited a significant amount of money and then it's just gone? So that just compounds how our negative feelings are towards money and how we're an ineffective manager of it and we're never going to have it. And so you have to approach money from, I believe, all angles: your mindset, the emotional side, your spiritual side. There are some myths out there that we really need to bust. It's not the love of money it's the love of money. Money is not evil. Money is just an exchange of energy. It's just an item. Okay. The love of money is what gets us in trouble. Right. So it's just, there's not a one fits all approach because we're all so different. What might work for you, Julie, might not for Chrissa, and Chrissa, what works for you won't work for me. So let's take a holistic approach and throw everything at it and try to make it so that, for me, I just want you to live a really rich life as you define it. And rich could be, I have a daughter, I think she could live off $7,000 a year. For me, it's like not even close. I need a whole lot more than that. But just be wealthy and rich inside, live with gratitude and appreciate all that. You asked what my favorite quote was: to whom much is given, much is expected. If I receive something financially or a gift or something, I think we should pay it forward. Like, I received a lot of education about money, and I feel an obligation to pay it back, to pay it forward to those other people who were in as much trouble as I was and felt as horrible as I felt, So let's help them. Because we can live stress-free with money and live a really rich life.
I love that you bring up the stress, right? Because a lot of times there's this equation of stress equals money, right? Like, we've been brought up a lot of times with this idea of, well, I need to work hard in order to make ends meet, right? And so therefore I need to be, if I'm not stressed out, then am I earning, right, what I'm making? And there's a kind of this idea out there. And I know when I think back to, when I was in elementary school and middle school and I was learning these things, that was the message I was having, right? Is that, like, being stressed at work was in some way good thing, right? Because it meant that like I am working hard, I am, and what I've come to learn in my adult life is like, I've been there and done that, right? Like I work right now, like my stress level is so much less than it used to be when I started my career. And it's because I'm not working any less hard, right? And I'm not having any less impact. It's that I'm able to have that impact. I'm actually more impactful because I'm not as stressed. I've broken that connection, right? Between stress, being frazzled, being overworked, being exhausted all the time, and earning a living, right? Been able to break that connection. There's so many connections like that we don't even know.
It's in your unconscious, right? You're so right. Some people who have the mindset that I have to work hard for my money. What happens if all of a sudden you do a blog and it blows up and now hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming your way? You can't accept that because you haven't worked hard. I was with someone last week and they were talking about how hard they had to work. And I said, you don't have to work so hard. It's not equal. Work hard equals money. No, I know a lot of hardworking poor people out there. So it's not it's not an equation that makes any sense, but that's what we subscribe to and we carry on with. And then someone like myself comes along and we have to bust that myth. We have to get you to see things differently, get you to be able to be open, less stress, more money. Oh my God, what a concept.
Absolutely. What are some other beliefs that you find in your practice that we kind of just carry with us and maybe don't even know that we are? What are some examples that maybe maybe listeners might have and not even realize?
I think a big one that I see is I work with predominantly women. Right. So I will introduce myself at a networking event. And I had one woman say to me, my husband deals with all of my financial affairs. I don't need you. And I gave her my business card. And I said, if that changes, give me a call. They die before we do for the most part, unless we're cougars and marry very young, right? Get real people. Or twice divorced, 3 times divorced, divorce happens, and women do not bear well with finances out of a divorce for the most part. So I think getting women to understand that they have a place at the table for money, they can enter the financial arena. Now, keep in mind, the financial arena is set by men and with terminology that kind of excludes us. There's this air of you don't know enough, so don't enter the arena. But the bottom line is it's not rocket science. We can learn it and we can come to the table, and we need to, because there's about $40 trillion in inheritance money that's coming down through the funnel. And if you look at it, women are going to be the recipients of that. One, because we outlast our men for the most part. It's going to be inheritances that come down. So we need to start stepping up to the plate and owning our wealth, being comfortable with money. We have a lot of high earning women who are out there, and money is not an issue. They're able to pay their bills, but they don't know what the bills cost. They can't even tell you their salary. They just know that there's more money and they don't have to worry about it. And you don't have to worry about it, but it is nice to know what your net worth is. It is nice to know what you're working towards. Do you have credit card debt? Should you bring it down? You should kind of bring that credit card debt down if you're carrying some. So I think the big thing for women is just having a place at the table and embracing money. Money grows on trees. I will also see women entrepreneurs who hold themselves back, keep themselves small because they're not supposed to be loud and out there and making a presence. That will affect their income. If we don't negotiate, we're not good at negotiating. I feel like I have to qualify. I'm doing some broad brush strokes here, and not all women are bad at negotiating, okay? But for those of us who don't negotiate, we leave about $1 million on the table over our lifetime at work. Okay, so we should be in there advocating for more pay. This she session that's going on right now took a lot of women out of the workforce because they had to stay home with their babies, or they were in industries like hair, nails, restaurants, where they lost their jobs. So we're really set back here now. Probably, I heard just this week, 20, 30 years. I haven't seen the research on it, but that's a big hit for us. And then women who can't up their, so if you're in business for yourself, you charge a rate, and sometimes you just need to charge more. And women are really resistant to doing that because we often will look at our clients' pocketbooks before we look at our own, like, oh, they can't really afford that. Well, if they can't afford to work with you, they are not your people, right? And you can, as therapists, you guys have sliding scales, or you can work with affluent people making big money, but you can also do a couple of charity cases or give your services away for free. There are ways to make more money and feel good about it. So yeah, there's a lot that we have to work on, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what did you call it? A she session?
I know. I've never heard that.
Yeah. This is like in 2008, how do you say that? 2008, that was like the man session because it affected construction industries that are male dominated. This has been a toll on women, the she session. So Google it, see what you come up with.
This is, I love that these conversations are being had because I've had these thoughts myself that the circumstances lately here, the last 3 years, have been disproportionately difficult for women. And I think that is because of, lasting gender roles. I think that's because, with childcare being such an issue over the last 3 years, I think that with those fields that women are more typically in, and we're in counseling, right? Like we are a female oriented workforce, and it really has taken so many females out of the workforce, which is very, very difficult. And I think that also it has a lot to do with this idea that women's jobs, because of the pay gap, that women's jobs are not as important as men's jobs in the household.
And the thing is, we buy into that. And we need to stop buying into that. We are part of the problem in that respect. We are not indisposable, and try to replace us. What's it cost to get healthcare? Like if something happened to my son-in-law, my daughter, and my son-in-law was left with that baby, he would have to have a cleaner come into the house. He would have to have babysitting. He would have to have a cook. I mean, he could barely function going to work every day after the loss of my daughter, right? Think about what it takes to put together just one mom.
They talk about life insurance, right? Life insurance for stay-at-home moms, and should you do it when you've got young kiddos? And heck yes, you should, because of what you're talking about, because childcare services and meal prep and stuff like that, all of that stuff adds up to in a need for a family. So absolutely.
Not only that, but think about this. It's a sad thing to think about. I hope I never have to think about another death again in my lifetime. But the average funeral is what, $10,000? Now, how many families can just whip out a check for $10,000 if something happens? So that's where life insurance really does. If you have young children or a financial situation that kind of relies on you, life insurance is crucial. Now, in your older ages, do you still need life insurance? I'll let you decide. I have my opinions, but.
We never had it until my daughter was born. And when I was about 6 months pregnant, I had a difficult pregnancy.
And thank goodness for modern medicine, because I always say 100 years ago, 150 years ago, my daughter wouldn't be alive and I wouldn't be alive. There's just no way. And so we knew that we had this difficult pregnancy and that it would be a difficult birth process. And that's when we got life insurance. We never had it before we had her. But as soon as we did, we said, okay, we got to start. And then Chrissa and our other vice president and my husband and I, we started having meetings about what do we do if Joe and Julie die, right? What happens with this company? Because that's a possibility. We drive in the car together all the time. We live in the same house, right? If there's a house fire, like there's a possibility that if I die, my husband's going to die at the same time, just because we're together a lot. And so we started to have these conversations about, okay, what happens when and if something happens to us? Because we know that it's not expected, but it's important if that situation happens.
That's just protecting yourself and your co-partners, your partners in business. That is taking a healthy, holistic approach to life. That is kudos to you for thinking like that and running your business that way. It's really well done.
When we experience loss, I know when my husband's father passed, we were not expecting it. Okay, he was young. He wasn't in great health, but he was young. Like and so we weren't expecting it, and it just really for us set that up as a possibility. Whereas before that, we really didn't, have that. And they talk about succession. They talk about, well, the next in line, right? And so when our grandparents pass, it feels a certain way, but they're still our parents, right? There's a barrier there. Mm-hmm. And then when our parents pass, it takes that barrier down. We're next in line. Yeah. And it really does impact psychologically the way that we plan. And the finances are about, you got to have a great offense. Yes. You got to, earning, you got to, create value in your life so that you're getting that earnings. But you also, you got to have a great defense and life insurance when you have kids. Before we had kids, when we were 26, 27, we were like, my parents, his parents can fight it at what we didn't care, right? But when it comes to kiddos, definitely that's part of that defense, right? And this company that we love, that we care about continuing on, and Chrissa and our other vice president Colleen, it's important. Chrissa's, other than my daughter and my husband, Chrissa and Colleen are the only other two people named in my will, right? So it's
awesome that you have a will.
Because those are important things. That's a defense, that is defense against these things that seem like they wouldn't happen, but they could, right? So, it really, that defensive part, I think that a lot of times with money behavior, a lot of times our fear kicks in, right? And our fear will stop us from taking a strong offense. And it will sometimes also stop us from taking a strong defense, right? We've got some friends right now, their parents are older and they are desperately trying to have those conversations with their parents, right? Because there's 4 kids, there's 4 adult kids, right? And then there's like 12 or 13 or 14 grandkids, right? Involved in this mix. And so they're going, please just tell us what you want, right? But it's hard. It's hard for people to say, when I pass, this is what I want, because then we have to accept the fact that I'm going to pass someday, right? And for me, it might be in 50 years or 60 years. It could be in 3 months. I just don't know. And that's a hard pill to swallow. That is not comfortable at all to acknowledge to ourselves.
Well, and that can be part of the problem too. There are people who are like, why should I save for the future? I'm going to live for today. I don't know when I'm going to die. Absolutely right. But I got to tell you, as I approach my older years, having a pile of money to fall back on feels a whole lot better than thinking, geez, I got to get up and go work today because I don't have anything to fall back on. Yeah. So you give up something, you make some sacrifices while you're young so that you have your cushion for when you get older, which I hope you all do, so that you have a nice cushion to fall back on. You know, there's this 3 to 5% rule that the financial planners will talk to you about. And that is that you can pull off, and there are some criteria involved. So again, a blanket statement, but you can pull down from your nest egg 3 to 5% annually without running out of money. So if you had $1 million, you can pull out 30 to 50 without running out of money for the rest of your life. Again, there's some criteria that will make that incorrect. But that's something to think about.
Inflation. Right now, inflation is a huge one, right?
Yep.
And there are so many, I mean, it's right now. And, you know, I'm 37. And so I remember 2008, right? I remember 2011. But I don't remember 78, right? Like I didn't live through.
It was a great year.
I didn't live through, right, these other times that really shaped conventional money wisdom, right? When we go, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. These experiences, what I'm finding is that living through these situations, being able to, okay, I lived through 2020. And 2021, which had its own stuff, and 22, which is now rapidly getting its own name and brand, you know, and being able to go, okay, like now that's a lived experience. But I think that it is much harder when we're starting out, when we're in our early 20s, or when we're, you know, 18, 19 and starting college or starting our work life, to know, right? Because we haven't lived through a lot of those experiences that are the reason that, you know, that our grandparents or our parents say to us now, this is what you should be doing,
right?
Going forward with money. And I think it's because it's an emotional experience when they give that advice. But hearing that advice isn't an emotional experience, right? It's a math experience when we get it. So the translation is different, having lived through things versus not.
Right. And I was raised by a father that had gone through the Depression. He was a child during the Depression, and he would talk about, you know, back then they had huge families, like 13, 14 children, and there would be one biscuit, and they would go to school with shoes with holes in them. What he wanted for his children, I had one older brother, he never wanted us to worry about, you know, walking to school with holes in our shoes and not having food. So if anything, he went the other direction and gave us everything, along with a sense of entitlement, which, you know, I think helped get me in my financial situation. It's so interesting, you know, here he experienced it, and rather than impart the wisdom, he just protected us.
Absolutely. The idea that somebody can go through the exact same time period in our culture's economy and come out with the totally different lesson. And I think I told you this morning, you know, I just finished reading The Psychology of Money. Yeah. And that is such a big part of that book, is that we live an experience and we take a completely different part, a completely different lesson, right, away from that experience that maybe the person next door to us might take from the exact same situation, right? And so you're describing somebody goes through the Depression and goes, never again, my kiddos will never experience what I experienced, right? And I'm going to make sure of it. And so, you know, they're going to have everything they want, because even if we could afford, even if we can afford, I don't know what sneakers, what the nice ones are, like $200 or something, right? So if we can, even if we can afford the $200 sneakers, or we can get like the same situation used, right, for like 20, I'm going to get my kids that $200 pair because I don't want them to have that pain that I had when we couldn't afford those types of things.
Think about the giver too. Like, what did that make him feel like, being able to do that? A sense of pride, taking care of his family, power, absolutely.
Power when he had been when he had lost so much power, right? And feeling of control and safety, and then trying to take that power and control and safety back, right?
And that plays out with your money as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And reparenting also, right? So in that situation, I don't know your father, but in situations, right, sometimes that happens where we go, okay, I want to be the parent for my child that I wish that I had when I was their age, right? We see that a lot just in general with people, but sometimes that is an absolutely beautiful thing, but sometimes it does cause problems because my kid at 5 is really, really different than I was at 5, right? Like when I was a year old, I experienced separation trauma, right? So I had an attachment trauma. I was adopted at a year and a half, right? So I was in a facility for 6 months, and so what I needed at 5 was totally different than what my daughter needs at 5, right? Who is literally like attached at my hip every second of the day, right? But we subconsciously, we reparent ourselves, we project our own stuff onto our kids so often in the name of trying to do it for them. But in some ways, we're doing it for ourselves too. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you think about it, right, those messages that you receive between 1 and 7, it's thought that our money beliefs and habits are formed by the age of 7. And by 7, we have these thoughts and we behave in the world and it works for us. But now fast forward to 37, 67, 57, that attitude of the 7-year-old that you've got perpetuating in your head no longer works for you. It doesn't serve you. And now's the time when you either get into enough pain or you're just curious, because there are some of us that are lifelong learners and we want to know more. That's the time when we have to this catch-all phrase of rewire your brain for success.
It is so interesting how the experiences that we have as children impact our behaviors, throughout, and we don't even know it. Like we think, we think it's normal. We think that, well, that's how everybody does things, or that's how everybody feels, and it's not. We're each individual in that regard. An example that between my husband and I, right? So he grew up in rural Iowa. I grew up in Massachusetts, right next to Boston, and he will not buy. So I shop at Aldi. I like Aldi brand. Like I buy Aldi brand macaroni and cheese for my kid, and he does not like that. He does like it is like Kraft or nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And so we always have these conversations because especially when we were first getting together and dating, and I'd go, "What is the difference? Like it tastes the same," and he would say, "You always had it. Like you could always have the choice to have Kraft macaroni and cheese versus like Cheesy Bee, or some other brand." And he says, "That's why you don't care." Right. And so he says, I didn't have that choice. Like when I was a kid, I wanted Kraft macaroni and cheese. It meant something. And now I can buy that for my kid. I'm going to, right? And it's that same kind of feeling of like, yeah, it's because we grew up differently, right? We grew up in different situations. And so then we see the same exact situation, but totally differently, right? Even though we're married, we're in the same place financially, right? Like we can buy Kraft macaroni and cheese, or we can buy Aldi brand, and I prefer to buy the Aldi brand, right? But we have such a different experience when we do it.
But it's so good that you're able to communicate like that. That's where we see couples that don't communicate. There, there's such a thing called financial infidelity, where one of them keeps the spending a secret, or we have a little addiction to gambling and we keep that a secret. So kudos to you for actually having the discussion. And yeah, it's over $1.39 box of pasta, but oh my gosh, think about if it were a bigger event, because if we as women are uncomfortable having a conversation about money because it means we're less than, or whatever attachment we put to it, right? We won't have the discussion for $1.39, and we won't have it for $100,000 thing either.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And then I can look at my side of that and go, okay, I was told my whole life that I was adopted because my biological parents didn't have the money, right, to feed me. And once I connected with them, I realized it's true. But even though there were other factors, but that they did not have the money. Korea in the 80s just didn't have any social services. There was no safety net for younger people. And so, so the reason that I know for me, the reason I shop at Aldi is because I don't if I can get twice the mac and cheese for the same price, I'm going to do that because my kid is always going to have food because nobody's going to take her from me. Right. And so then I go this is why I shop at Aldi, and this is why I, want to buy twice as much. And that's an emotional, it doesn't seem like it would be, right? But that's an emotional thing. And then my husband on the total other side, it's an emotional thing on buying craft. And so it's just so interesting. And I know that's such a small example, but it's so interesting, how these little things become the big things, and how these little things really, they are the big things.
Mm-hmm. They are. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about in terms of, and I remember you said that, sometimes as women, if we're not an equal partner in the financial side, right? If we're taking on more of the responsibility, the management, the supervision of the maybe childcare side or house maintenance side, and maybe we've got, maybe our partner is and male or female, really, because it happens the other direction too, where it's a guy might say, well, I got to go ask my wife, for whatever money. And so it happens on both sides, where one partner might take, more of a lead, and that's totally fine, as long as, like you're saying, the other partner understands what's happening, has a say, everybody has an equal vote in what happens with household finances. And I think that what you were talking about in terms, it's not about the money, it's about equality. It's about having a voice. It's about empowerment in your case, for women, right? Because you work with women. So it's about that equality and that distribution within the household of those roles as well.
Right. And acknowledging that so as my father raised me, he always wanted me to be taken care of by a man. I hope that that's an older generation thing, but I think kind of Disney perpetuates it with our princesses being rescued and stuff. But a woman's role for him was barefoot, pregnant, and tied to the stove. And when I said I was going to college, he tried to prevent me from doing that. And so for me, I had to stand up to him, and I had to buck the trend, because he just felt that a woman's role was in the home. And we have to make way for our roles to change, to be equal footing. Farnoosh Torabi, has written a book about when she makes more, right? Because it's not just the male who makes more in a heterosexual relationship. There are times where women make more. And how do you handle a man in that situation, right? Because the dynamic has changed. And if he was like my father and very masculine and, all the man rules the roost, my father would have had a hard time if my mother made more money than he did, So that introduces a whole new dynamic to the situation. So that's where just discussion and awareness is crucial. And a lot of my work in dealing with people is to look at how were you raised and what were the messages that you received, and how strongly have they bought into those messages? Some of us are rebels and others of us just can't change because that's the way it's always been.
Absolutely. I think it comes down also, the quote that you shared about to whom much is given, much is expected. And I really do love that because in a situation, there is a responsibility that we have. And it's not a responsibility just to pay our bills, right? It's a responsibility to be intentional with what we do, with what we've been given. And money is a part of that, but also talent, also connections, also family, like social connections, the people within our family. So our children, our partners, our parents, our siblings, we've got a responsibility to be intentional about how we manage all of the things that we have been provided. And I think that, even if we're not the ones going, okay, well, I'm the one who enjoys the budgeting part, right? Like, oh, I'm the one who kind of drives the car. That's okay in a partnership, as long as we are both being intentional and putting our own intention, because in a couple, and especially a couple, that you described where maybe one partner only handles the money and the other gets an allowance, or the other gets, this or that, or doesn't get a vote or a seat at the table, like you said. In those situations, then there is a tendency in those relationships for there to be a high amount of enmeshment as well.
Enmeshment and resentment. Right?
Absolutely.
Resentment. Yeah. I'm all over having monthly. I mean, if you have weekly money dates, good for you. If you don't have money dates at all, just pick one day a month, just start somewhere, but have the discussion, like you were talking about intentionality. How about what does the future look like for you? What are you working towards? What are your shared goals, and are you on the same page? And if you're not, it's okay to be on different pages, but have some understanding and compassion for the other person and work it out. How can you both achieve the goals that you want? How can you just make it work for both of you so that you can be together, but yet individual in your own right? Follow your career path. And
yes. Yeah. Being two individuals that are together, right? And as opposed to each person being a half. Right. And so, yeah, I think that's so important. And, right, the number one cause of divorce, right, is money fights. And then after that, religious fights and kids fights, right? Like those are the top three reasons for divorce in our country. And I think it's because, and just like with counseling, money has this weird, taboo feeling about it. Like there's a feeling that we shouldn't be talking about it, thinking about it, planning with it, that it should either bring us joy or bring us security, and that's it, right? And so I think that these conversations are so important within a family, right? To be having those conversations and say, just like conversations about mental health are so important to be having in a family and in a couple, so that, everybody can be supporting each other, like you said, towards those goals that we all have as individuals. We've got individual goals, we've got goals as a couple, and we've got goals as a family. And those are all important. And there are ways to be able to be working towards all of them simultaneously. It really is okay to do that, to have your individual goals, to have your couple goals, and to have your family goals. And they don't have to take priority over one another. They don't have to compete with one another, as long as we're valuing that each person is an individual within that conversation.
Right. And what a great lesson to learn that other people have your back, that you're not going this life alone, that you have someone that you can turn to, whether it's hopefully if you're in a family, you can turn to your family. And if for those of us that can't turn to our family, that's where you guys come in, therapy, coaches, people, we're all out there to help others.
Absolutely. And I know when we talked, you talked about, one of your first questions is, are you working with a counselor? Just because it's so tied together. Our behaviors with money, or our behaviors with our nutrition, our behaviors all across the board are so intertwined with our mental health and the progress that we are making towards our emotional goals, towards our ability to see things from different perspectives, and not through maybe the trauma lens that we've previously seen the world through, or at least to be able to go, oh, I see what just happened when I thought about that situation, right? Like my 1-year-old just kicked in, and now let me look at that as a 37-year-old, right? And just to be able to intentionally do that and go, yeah, my 1-year-old isn't wrong, right? To think about it that way, but it's not 1986.
Right. And you introduced
the 37-year-old is more accurate for this moment.
Absolutely. And what you just introduced is something that we look at when we're working with people sometimes, but that's the inner child, that 1-year-old, right? If you have a behavior or something that's going on and you don't understand it, one of the questions I like to ask is, think back, when was the first time you felt that emotion? And oftentimes they can go back to when they were kids and they had been ridiculed and it came out, and then you can just reparent that situation. And that can help people tremendously. But we can't, we all have inner children. We were all a child once, and some of us luckily outgrew it and it doesn't rule our lives. And for other people, that inner child is alive and well and running the show. And, at 37, 47, 57, we gotta comfort her and let us take the reign.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for being here, Pam. So if you could give a suggestion to one person that might be on the fence about starting counseling or starting, to learn how to master their money as a female, what suggestion might you give to somebody kind of on the fence about seeking support?
I think if you're on the fence about seeking support, my recommendation to you would be to go for it. What do you have to lose? If you get into a situation and you're uncomfortable, you can bail, you can stop going, but you don't know how great life can be when you're in the middle of a crisis or just living. I would live life, I'd look in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. And after years and years of that, I'm like, where's my soul? You have to like who you see in the mirror, and you have to have a soul-driven life. And if you're not living that kind of a lifestyle, then I say it is time to seek therapy. And I also will have to tell you to interview a few therapists, because you want to be able to click. You don't go with the first one or the second one. Get to know you a little bit better and find out, can I share my deepest, darkest secrets? Because, we're in this room together. I know that we've been told people's deepest, darkest secrets that they've never told anybody. And it's our responsibility to hold them and to launch them and to maintain their confidentiality. And it's a safe place to land when you work with us, I like to think.
Absolutely. Love that. And it is a really, really challenging thing emotionally to do that. But I love what you're saying about start with
where you are as well. And if you're going, there are things I wish were maybe different, right? What we're seeing is the symptom. We're like problems with that, that's a symptom. It's the external thing that we can see, but it's not the problem. And so being able to, and a lot of times we try to address those things as though they are the problem, and they're not. And so what I love about this is that you're going, yeah, let's heal those things that need to be healed, so that, because that actually is the problem. And then these symptoms are going to go away, right? These symptoms are going to be resolved. So I love that. That is excellent. So where can people find you? Where can people find Money Mastery with Pam? How do they connect with you?
Well, you can go to the website, Money Mastery with Pam. I have a Smart Woman's Guide. You can just give us your email. You'll get the Smart Woman's Guide. And I did launch an academy, the Abundance Academy, which is a money monthly membership, which incorporates the practical, tactical, emotional. So if you went to moneymasterywithpam.com/academy, you can read all about that. If you're interested, please join us.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, Pam. We've really, really appreciated talking to you today. And I think we, I feel like I've learned a lot. I think it's great to have these conversations. So we really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been a great pleasure of mine. I am Pam Richardson, and I need a counselor.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Me too. So does Chrissa. We all do. And what I love about when we have, people who are doing support outside of mental health counseling on the show is that it really does highlight that, mental health counseling, behavioral health counseling, they're not the same thing. They are part of this team. And your money counselor or your money coach or money support person, it's another person on your team to help you as a whole individual. And so I love that, because I think sometimes people go, well, I'm seeing a therapist, so I don't need, these other things. And it's like, no, they are connected, but they are different pieces of you as an individual. So absolutely love that. All right. So if you are in the state of Iowa and you're interested in mental health counseling or behavioral health counseling for you or your kiddos, give us a call at 800-531-4236.
And like Julie mentioned at the beginning, we post every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central. So save up that laundry or meal prepping or whatever task you hate doing and listen to us while you do it. And we can help convince you to call a counselor or to look up Pam and get set up with her that week as well. And if you have any questions for us or for Pam, you can reach us on Facebook Messenger at You Need a Counselor Podcast on Facebook, or You Need a Counselor Podcast on Instagram as well. So I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Bye.